Genesis chapter 28. We are talking about Jacob. Jacob means grabber. Jacob was the one who grabbed. He was the one who fought. He was the one who wrestled. And at this time, in chapter 27, he stole his brother's blessing. So after he stole his brother's blessing, now he's in a state of fear. Why? Because he's afraid his brother will come and kill him. So what he does is, in this state of fear, his dad, Isaac, calls him and tells him, "Hey, I don't want you to stay here. I have a safe place for you, and that is your mom's hometown. Your mom is she's not a Canaanite, you know that, and she's from the Ur of the Chaldeans, and that's where from Abraham came out. And your mom is from there, so I want you to go to your mom's brother. His name is Laban." So he sends him and says, "You need to go and visit that place and take shelter during this time of crisis." Verse 5, "Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and when he went to Paddan Aram, to Laban son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau." And when he goes, Isaac also blesses him again, right? And then Esau learned that now his target, that is his brother, has escaped. So he wants to take revenge on his parents. Did you see that? What kind of person Esau was, that he wanted to displease his parents. How did he want to do that? He understood that the Canaanite women were not okay to be his daughters-in-law for Isaac. And then because they displeased him so much, what did he do? Verse 8, "Esau then realizing how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac, so he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth and the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had." The wives he had were Hittite women. They were Hittite women. Now, not only Hittite women, now what it is, now got Canaanite women also as his wife. So why he is doing this is simply to level his grudge against his dad. One thing Esau is forgetting is, he's the one to blame, not his dad. Why? His dad never told him to sell his birthright. He was hungry. And he came to his brother and said, "Give me that stew." He could have said, "Okay, I'm not going to give my birthright to you." But Esau did that. He felt the birthright was of no value, and he gave prominence to the food. Therefore, that's the tragedy. Okay? Now here what happened is, Jacob left and he started moving. And he set out for Haran. Verse 11, "When he had reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set." I want you to understand that there are some geographical descriptions in the scripture which have very, very powerful meanings. Here, the sun had set. Now, do you have to really describe the sun had set? Tell me something. There are so many descriptions of the travels of people, but have you ever described the sun set, the sun rose? Usually not. Is it not? Usually not. So, if you find the description given here, it means there is some reason. The geographical description of this cosmic event of sun setting is not just geographical, it is also symbolic in Jacob's life. Now, this is a point of time. Tell me, is he on a high note or a low note? He's on a low note. He is running away from his parents. He is a lonely guy. He is in the grip of fear of his life. Now, would he reach the destination? We don't know. He started off his journey. So it's a big question mark in his life. At this point of time, you know what happened? You see the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. You see how gracious our God is. In times when our sun sets, in times when we are so lonely, in times when we are so down, you know what God does? He sends somebody to support us. He sends somebody to rescue us. That's exactly what happened. This man slept that night. When he slept that night, he saw in a vision. He had a dream. Taking one of the verse 12. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on earth, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Did you see that? See the language there? The angels must be, actually what should they do? What should they be doing? They should be descending and ascending. Yes or no? Because we think, where are the angels? Angels live in the heaven. So there, you should find the description written as angels descending and ascending. But that's not what Bible says. It says angels were ascending and descending. You know what it tells you? Do you know that God has given you protection by providing you an angel? God has given you an angel. When Daniel was in the lion's den, who stopped the mouth of those lions? It was an angel. So God is a God who knows when you are in the time of trial, when you are in time of crisis, and He will provide a beautiful way for you to escape out of that. He will give you protection. That's why He's called the rock. That's why He's called the shelter. He's called the refuge. And that's what we see here. This man is running away all alone, and then you find the angels of God are with him. So think about this. When the angels are ascending and descending, where were the angels? The angels were with Jacob. They were ascending and descending. There above it stood the Lord, and He said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. All the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Let me ask you a question. Did Jacob earn these statements from God? Nothing. He did not. Till this point of time, and even beyond, you will find that this man is still a schemer. He's still a manipulator. He's still a grabber. First of all, he grabbed his brother's birthright. Secondly, he grabbed his brother's blessing. And you will see what all he grabs in the future. And here, God is coming and telling him, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. My dear brothers and sisters, our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is not a God only restricted to the Israelites. He is a God of all creation. Let me tell you, this is what God is confirming to you, or giving you the assurance. You know what? I will not leave you until I have promised. I have done what I have promised you. What do you think God has promised you? You know what God has promised you? You will be with me where I am. You will sit with me on my throne. And that's why God says, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. On Tuesday, when we had a church prayer, we were talking about Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 7 and 8. I want to read that verse again. I love that verse. I want you to look at that. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. What other nation is so great as to have their gods near them, the way the Lord our God is near us when we pray to Him? When we pray to Him, our God is so near to us. There are many people, many different religions where the people have to go, climb the mountains, cross the oceans, travel overseas to meet their God. But your God and my God is so close to us that when we pray, He's so near us. And he says, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. See, these are the assurances that God is giving. I want you to remember three important verses to understand God's covenant. Okay? The first verse is in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 2 and 3. This is what God said to Abraham. Okay? Genesis 12, 2 and 3. And several places he confirms it to him. Alright. The other verse that you need to remember is Genesis chapter 26 and verses 4 and 5. 26, 4 and 5. That is the promise. That's the promise that God gave to Isaac. The other promise that you find God giving to Jacob is in chapter 28 and verses 13 to 15. Did you get it? Genesis 12, 2 and 3 to Abraham. Genesis 26, verse 4 and 5 to Isaac. Genesis 28, 13 to 15 to Jacob. It's the same promise. It's the same promise that God has made to these three generations. Father, son and grandson. So, when Jacob awoke, he understood what? My goodness, this is the place where I saw God. He said, how awesome it is. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Okay, wonderful. What does he do? Early the next morning, he set up a pillar and poured oil on top of it and called it what? Bethel. Bethel means the house of God. That place had that city had a different name, but he called that place as Bethel. Okay? Now, after hearing such a confirmation from God, what does Jacob say? You know, what does Jacob say? You remember what God promised to Abraham in Genesis 15? He said, I am your very great reward. God took him by hand and took him out and showed him all the stars in the sky. You know, what is the response of Abraham? How did Abraham respond? Abraham responded by saying, what? But I don't have a son. But how do I know I'll acquire this land? So he had all these question marks. Now, Jacob also is very much like that. When God gave him so much assurance and said, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. You know what he says? Verse 20. Then Jacob made a vow saying, look at his vow. If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. Look at how shallow this man is. He says, if God gives me food, helps me in my journey, there are no robbers anywhere, there is no wild animals anywhere, I don't lose any health or nothing, and if I can come back, I have enough food to eat, I can come back to my dad's house, then the Lord will be my God. Look at how shallow this man is, how earthly minded he is. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. So this is where he's trying to look at tithe as a bribe. You know what? He's saying, you know what, God, if you give me a lot of money, I'll give you tithe. So it means to say what? God should bless him with the expectation that Jacob will give him a tithe. Do you think God needs a tithe? Tell me one thing. Did you ever think about that? Does God really need your tithe? Many people, they don't really understand. Even when he does not need a tithe, then why is he asking for a tithe? It's only to see your faithfulness towards your money. That's only a test to see how faithful you are. When there's a balance between God and money, where you would go. And that's why Jesus himself said, you cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve both. This is a time of Christmas. People are giving gifts. Tell me something, who is more important? Is the gift more important or the giver more important? The giver is more important. People don't value the giver. They get the gift, they forget the giver. You know who does that? Children do that. That's their age. They see a big toy and they give you one hug and say thank you, and they're gone. They're fascinated with that train or that doll or whatever. But see, a grown-up man, he remembers. He remembers. I tell you one example. You see my laptop bag up there? Whenever I see that, I remember a church. I went to preach in that church, and out of the blue on a Wednesday night, can you just imagine on a Wednesday night, this pastor says, let's take a love offering. He took a love offering, and then he put it in my pocket and said, Chandra, I don't even know how much this is. I just out of the blue announced it. And he gave it to me and said, I want you to keep this with you. And my mom always used to say, whenever you get things like that, you must buy something so that you can remember it forever. So I went to Sam's Club and I wanted to have a laptop bag, and I was looking and I saw this on sale for the same amount that was in my pocket. I bought it. Whenever I see that, I remember those people. You know, the tragedy is we get gifts and we forget the giver. Jesus Christ gave His Son as a gift. I tell you, this is the tragedy during Christmas. That people can celebrate Christmas without thinking about Jesus Christ. I liked an email Gary sent. He said, I want to make a conscious effort this year to say Happy Christmas, not Happy Holidays. We have come to a stage where we have to fight to use a term which is related to Jesus Christ. And Jacob is something like that. He's so shallow, very selfish-minded. He says, if you bless me a lot, I'll give you a tithe. Do you think God is interested in your tithe? He owns the universe. He owns the whole universe. I remember there was a very rich man back home in India. We went for his wedding. And we all young boys, we were in the college. And we were discussing, what do we give this man as a gift? You know, he's a very rich guy. He came, he studied here in the United States. His mom and dad both were nurses in the Middle East. So they have a lot of money. Lots and lots of money. Tons of money. And then we started thinking about that. What gift do we give to this man? You know, one of them said, don't even bother about it. You know why? Whatever gift you give, he'll not even open it. He'll not even open it. He's such a rich man. You don't even need all that. Do you think a God is like that? Though He owns the universe, He says, I want you to pay your tithe. Why? Because I want to see where your heart is. Somebody said, if you don't pay your tithe, God gets His share. He'll get His share. He knows how to get His money. But the important thing is, our heart must be at the right place. This man's heart is not in the right place. This man's heart is not in the right place. He says, if you provide me all these earthly things, then I will pay you the tithe. That's what Jacob is. Okay, let's see what happens. He continues his journey, comes to Haran, and there he introduces himself and says, I am Jacob, and do you know Nahor's grandson Laban? And people find out, okay, Rachel shows up there. When Rachel shows up there, he talks to her, and then he goes with her to his uncle's house, his maternal uncle. And then Laban is so excited that he's his relative. And then Jacob stays back with Laban. Now look at what happened. Verse 16. Now Laban had two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah and Rachel, there are two girls, and Leah was one with the weak eyes. She was not a beautiful girl. Rachel was a beautiful girl. Now, what do you think Jacob did? He started dating Rachel. Okay, his likeness for Rachel was more. So what he did is, he said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel. Now, here is Laban. You know, do you understand? Jacob is somebody who's been trying to trick people and grab and cheat. You know what? He found his match in Laban. He found his match in Laban. For 7 years, he worked hard. I don't know if I've never seen anybody do that. I'll work for you 7 years and you give me a daughter. It's tough. It's tough. Okay? Here, you find this man is working 7 years. Look at this verse. I want you to underline this if you can. Verse 20. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love to her. Tell me, 7 years, small time or long time? It's quite a long time. Quite a long time. Yeah? I saw on Facebook there was one picture with a statement which said, why is it that when I close my eyes in the morning, when I wake up, and I close my eyes, and then I open my eyes, it is already 7:30. Okay? So 2 hours passed. I opened my eyes, it was 5:30, I closed my eyes, and I woke up, it was 7:30. Why is it that in the school, it is 11:30, I close my eyes and open my eyes, it is still 11:31. The time looks so short in the school, and here the time is run away so fast. Okay, it depends on where you are. Have you ever heard somebody saying, I waited 1 long hour? I waited 1 long hour. Hour is 60 minutes. How can it be long or short? Your mental status with respect to that situation. 7 years seemed like only a few days to Jacob. You know why? There's the answer in the same statement. Because of his love for her. My dear brothers and sisters, you and I have been hearing people mock at Christians and say, oh, your Jesus said, I'm coming soon. Behold, I come quickly. He's been telling that for 2,000 years. But do you know how people who love Jesus Christ have lived? Let me tell you something interesting. The people in the first century, you know how they lived? The disciples. Now when Jesus Christ left, ascended into heaven, did they tell them he's going to come back when? No, he has never told anybody. He says, even I don't know when I'm coming back. You know how the disciples lived? They lived as if Jesus was coming right then. He was going to come tomorrow. That's why Paul, writing to the First Thessalonians, which is his first letter to anybody, he talks about the second coming of Jesus Christ. The early believers in the first century lived as if Jesus was coming right then. And it's been now 2,000 plus odd years. Is he still come? There are people who mock. Say, he's been telling that. No, he won't. But he's not a liar. He will come. But this is what the point is. How do you live? How do you think your life has to be? The waiting time will look like a few days only if you love God. You love God. Waiting for 7 years to Jacob was nothing. Okay? That night there was a wedding. After 7 years this man is so excited and he's got everything ready, and now he wants to consummate the marriage. So this man, I'm sure there was a big party, there was a big feast. So Laban was a clever guy. Laban was, he's a match to Jacob. So there was a big party, and the wedding was in the evening. So this guy got drunk, and at night, in the evening, what did Laban do? He brought a girl and put her hand in Jacob's hand and said, this is your wife. Right? Next morning he wakes up, and that's Leah. So what do you think happened? The deceiver was deceived. The deceiver was deceived. So he got a shock of his life and then came running to him and said, what did you do? And then Laban said, see, I cannot give my daughter my younger daughter without getting my older daughter married. So then what did he do? He worked for Rachel another 7 years. What did he do? Look at that. Verse 27. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work. So he worked for another 7 years for Rachel. Okay? Let me tell you something. Listen to this very, very carefully. He worked for 14 years for Rachel. 14 years for Rachel. I think by the time he must have lost his, some of his hair, gray hair must have come, we don't know. But this is what I want to tell you. Jacob, please listen carefully. Jacob, in all these 14 years, though he loved Rachel more than Leah, waited and worked for this girl Rachel for 14 years. He never misbehaved with this girl, though he was living in the same house for 14 years. Ever think about that? 14 years he's waited for this girl, but you don't find any record that Jacob misbehaved with this girl. Can you find some people today like that? It's very difficult. Very, very difficult. Okay? The bridal week was over, 7 years over. Now Rachel is become his second wife. Alright. So, verse 30. Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. Okay? He worked for 7 years more. So, this is what happened. And then they got children. And along with the girls, the father also gave maid servants. So, in fact, actually you can say there are 2 wives and 2 concubines. Okay? So, the 4 people, I gave you a sheet of paper that tells you who is who and who were their children and what are the meanings of their names. Remember, the Jews had a lot of meaning attached to the names given to their children. So Leah, she gave birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Okay? And then she also gave birth to Zebulun and Issachar. And you find her maidservant Bilhah. She gave birth to Dan and Naphtali. That was Rachel's servant. And Leah's servant Zilpah, she gave birth to Gad and Asher. And Rachel gave birth to Joseph and Benjamin. Okay? These are the 12 boys. And Leah also gave birth to a girl called Dinah. And Dinah herself takes one whole chapter in the Bible because a big tragedy happened there. We will see why all that tragedy happened later. Okay? So in all you find there are 13 children born to Jacob. Now tell you one thing. This man, when he came, how did he come? Empty-handed. A lonesome man. And now he has got a huge family. Okay. Now, what happened was that God blessed Laban. Did you hear me? God blessed Laban. Why did God bless Laban? You know why? Verse 27. Verse 27. Last part. The Lord had blessed me because of you. So Jacob was the reason for God to bless Laban. So Jacob became a source of blessing to Laban. Okay? And when Jacob wanted to go home, and Laban said, no, wait here. You're not going. You wait here. God blessed me because of you. So now Jacob says, hey, now tell me, what do I do? I've been working all my life for you. When do I work for myself? And then they devise a strategy and say, okay, from now on you work for yourself. And this is how we divide. So they divided the flock into the dark colors and the streaked and the spotted into separate. And then Jacob devised a plan. So what happened was, Verse 37. Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs, so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Now when you listen to this, in this age, when you know there is so much of technology, there is so much of genetic engineering, there is so much of advanced science, would you believe this? That when these animals were mating and they saw this stripes of the bark peeled, and because of that the color of the baby or the calf or whatever was streaked or spotted because it saw it. Let me tell you something. This was what Jacob was externally trying to do. But we know that God was behind it. God was behind it. He was blessing this man. And God said, I will bless you. When he says, I will bless you, he means what he says. But he thinks it is my craftiness, my cleverness and my wisdom that's helping me get all this property. See, you find children of a different complexion from their parents sometimes. Right? If the parents both are dark, it doesn't mean that the child has to be dark. I'm a genetics graduate. Okay, so we understand, we studied how this complexion comes into picture. So here, just by looking at that, see, if this is how children can be born. Every time when mother is about to deliver a baby, what would you do? Put a Miss Universe picture on the wall so that you deliver a very beautiful baby. Does it happen? No, it is all genetic. And God was controlling all that. But this man thinks it is my wisdom. Anyway, God blessed this man. God blessed him a lot, abundantly. He blessed him abundantly. Okay, then the strong animals, he also made it a point to get the strong animals to his side, and all the streaked and the spotted were on his side. So his flock started multiplying, and Laban's was coming down and down. So therefore what happens? Attitudes change. Right? Have you had any experience where the attitudes of people have changed? Right? People, they were so good and suddenly their attitude has changed. What do you do there? Look at what this man did. Chapter 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth and from what belonged to our father. Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Now I want to take you to the other side. Has God's attitude toward you changed? Did you hear me? Man's attitude may change. But look at this man. He's still a schemer. He's still a manipulator. Did God's attitude change toward Jacob? No. It didn't change. That is the beauty of our God. His love is not dependent on your reactions to situations. When he said, I love you, it means I love you. Okay. This man says to his wives, and we need to get out. We need to get out from this place. So they all plan and say, okay, right, we're ready. So Jacob runs away. He leaves the place without telling his father-in-law. Tell me something. Would you really do that? Your father-in-law is gone out of town, let us say to Dallas. Okay? And you tell your wives, before your dad comes here, we need to quit. We need to leave. Okay? When will you come back? No idea. Will you come back for Thanksgiving? No, nothing like that. We are leaving. Would you not let your wives go and say goodbye to your dad? See how these girls behave. They said, what you're saying is right. We don't want to have anything with our dad. Let's get out. Let's get out from here. So all these people, how he's moving out of this camp now? 4 wives. Okay, 2 wives and 2 concubines. 13 children. All his property. And then he's now moving out. There's a 3-day distance between him and Laban. So they start traveling. So he starts traveling. He doesn't say goodbye to his uncle. And he's already started. So when Laban comes back home and he realizes, when everything is empty here, where's my daughters? Where's my son-in-law? When he's gone. So what he does is he chases this guy. He chases him and reaches him. Verse 24. Then God, let me show this. Verse 23. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. And what did happen? When this, look at God's attitude. This is what I wanted to show you. Laban's attitude changed towards Jacob. But when I tell you, Laban has every right to argue and fight with Jacob for doing this, for taking his daughters and his grandchildren away from him without telling him. He has every right to contend with Jacob. You know what God says there? Verse 24. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Tell me something, is God's attitude changed? No. This guy who's come up in anger, God stops him and says, hey, you're not going to do anything to my son. You're not saying anything to Jacob. Okay? Laban comes and argues with him and said, why did you do this? Why didn't you give me the privilege? Okay? So this is where Jacob is answering Laban. And then the answer he gives is amazing. Now, this part has many interpretations. Okay? I am reading from 36, verse 36 to 42. Now this part you can also take and make use of it for talking about God trying to talk to a pastor. A pastor. How God talks to a shepherd. He's talking about how a shepherd lived a life. Okay? Verse 36 on. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He asked Laban. What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the 2 of us. And here is the description of what Jacob did during this time when he was with Laban. Please listen to this carefully. I have been with you for 20 years now. He worked for 14 years for for Rachel, actually for 7, and the next 7, and he works for 6 more years. Okay? So 20 years. Somebody was working in a field for 20 years. And this is how he worked. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and the sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wage 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and fear of Isaac, had not been with me, you would have surely sent me away empty-handed. I tell you one thing, if the shepherds of the churches, if the pastors work like this The way Jacob talked about the way he worked in Laban's house, I tell you, the churches will be so blessed places. You know what he says? Tell me something. Think about a pastor. Think about a pastor, and tell me something. I'm a pastor too, okay? You can also think about me. I want you to think about this and say, this was my situation. Can any pastor say like this? The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night. Sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years. Do you find people struggling like this? I tell you with a great burden that many people have taken the vocation as a comfortable job. There are many people, I don't blame everybody, but there are people who have taken this calling that God has put on them as a 40-hour-a-week job. And here you find Jacob giving an account to his uncle. And what temperament uncle came to find fault with him. He searched his entire place to look for his idols. He didn't find any. Of course, Rachel hid them. That's a different story. But what Jacob spoke, his uncle did not have a voice to fight back. He says, you know how I lived? 20 years I lived, worked for you. And all these 20 years, you changed my wage 10 times. I bore the loss myself. Have you found some pastors who can say, I bore a loss so that I can bless my church member? There are many blessed God servants, let me tell you. Let me tell you a great example. A pastor, he was a poor man. He didn't have enough money. You know what he did? You would find this very, very, very strange. Very, very strange. One of his church members had a very big debt. Very big debt. You know what he did? He went to the hospital, donated his kidney, and for that organ donation they give you a lot of money. He brought that money and gave it to a church member and said, pay your debt. Would anybody do that? I know that person. Where the shepherd bears the loss for his sheep. My Jesus, who is a shepherd, he bore the loss for his sheep. That's why he says, I am the good shepherd. A good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. That's a beautiful example that you find in the life of Jesus. And then these people agree on, okay, we will make a covenant and we will not fight over this, and they part their company. In chapter 32, this is a very powerful chapter. Chapter 32 is very, very powerful. Now look at this. Jacob is still a schemer. You remember that? He's a schemer, he's a grabber, he's a manipulator. Now, he has won an argument against his uncle, though there is fault in his camp, is it not? Rachel got the idols. There is fault in his camp. He has argued and won this argument over his uncle. And then, chapter 32 verse 1 is so beautiful. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. This is the grace of God, that the angels come to meet a deceiver. Would you give a good certificate to this man? Would you recommend to God, if you were sitting with God and then ask God's counsel, let's just imaginary fictitious situation. Suppose God asked you, Chandra, that guy is just leaving back, he's going back to his homeland. Do you think we should send angels to him for some help? You know what you and I would say? God, what are you trying to do? He's a deceiver, he's a manipulator. You want to send angels to him? Our God is not like that. He sent angels. Second point. You know why God sent angels to Jacob at this point of time? Because God knows that there's a big danger coming ahead of him. What's the danger? His brother Esau is coming. 20 years ago, this fellow deceived his brother, stole his blessing and ran away. And what happened? Verse 3. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. So Esau is coming with how many people, you know? He's coming with 400 men. Just tell me something. What do you think will be running in your mind when you know that you deceived somebody 20 years ago? You sent a message that I'm coming, and then he is coming with 400 men. You said, my story is over. My story is over. So that's where, see how Jacob starts addressing because of this fear. Please remember, he's still a manipulator. The way Jacob does is, he uses his brain and does the brainstorming and uses the best method how to handle the situation. So he starts calling his brother as my Lord. He starts addressing, even by sending these messengers, he is addressing his brother as my Lord. He never did that when he was back home 20 years ago. But now he's doing it. You know why? Because he has got that fear that his brother is coming to, I'm sure, is coming to kill him. That's what his fear is. Okay. Then what did he do? So he divided the entire group into two camps. Okay. He divided the entire group into two camps because he thought if he attacks one group, at least the other group will survive. So that's when he prayed. Look at this prayer. Verse 9. Now this is a prayer of a guy who's scared, you know. But like we were during our childhood, when we used to go upstairs, you know, in the apartments, suppose the light was not on in the apartments, when you take the stairs, you know what we used to do? During childhood? Sing a hymn. Sing a hymn while taking the stairs. You know why? Because that will dispel our fear. And this man is in trouble and he knows his brother is coming with 400 people, and then immediately prays. What's his prayer? Verse 9. Then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. Here is what you hear. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. You see the strange language? This man says, when I crossed this Jordan River 20 years ago, I was all alone. But now I'm in two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I'm afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. So he is praying this prayer for God's protection. Okay? Then he spent the night there, and then he started giving gifts. You know how many gifts he gave? Look at the gifts he gave. Okay? Chapter 32 verse 13. He selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats. Tell you one thing. You will only give a gift when you have ample. Okay? Your gift will be only a small percentage of what you actually have. So looking at the gift, you can understand how rich this man was. Right? 200 female goats and 20 male goats. 200 female goats. How many truckloads would that be? Okay? 20 male goats. 200 ewes, my goodness, and 20 rams. So here itself 440. 30 female camels and their young. 40 cows and 10 bulls. 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. It's like a huge circus. Right? He's giving such a huge gift for what? Only to bribe his brother again for what? So that he may save his life. Okay. And Esau shows up. Esau shows up. And then, before he comes, all these, he's sending these groups one after another. And then he told these people, verse 17, he instructed the one in the lead, when my brother Esau meets you and asks, to whom do you belong and where are you going? And who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau. Did you see the language? I am your servant, you are my lord. Why? Because he is scared. Very shallow man. Very, very good manipulator. Okay. All these groups have gone. Verse 22. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. Verse 24. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till day. My dear brothers and sisters, 20 years ago, God made a promise to Jacob. I will bless you. He said, I'm going to amazingly bless you. Your children will be like the dust on the seashore. With all this, Jacob forgot the blessing that God was giving to him. At this point of time, he remembered the promise he made. If you bless me, provide me food, and give me food to eat, and then give me clothes to wear, give me a safe journey, when I'm coming back, then I will do this to you. Remember what Jacob said? And God also did not find Jacob available to him in these 20 years. He was busy running after Rachel for 7 years, cheated by his father-in-law. Again another 7 years. Now he has got another wife. Now he's got 2 more concubines. Now he's got 11 children at home. 11 sons and a daughter. So he has to please his wives and play with the children. And then he's now got busy with his activities with rearing the sheep and all these camels and donkeys and all this. So he's got so busy. But there came a time in his life. You see that language? Verse 24. So Jacob was left alone. Today, there's nobody around him. His wives are not with him. His children are not there with him. His property is also not with him tonight. And this night he was left all alone. And that is when you find a man wrestled with him till day. You know who's that man? The different interpretations, that is an angel, some people say. But that is actually a representative of God. I would put it that way. God will be meeting you only when you are available to Him. Because you can always avoid meeting God. Yes or no? You can always avoid meeting God. But when you say, oh Lord, okay, I'm available to you, and that is when God will work. Tell you one thing. In Mark chapter 4, when Jesus was preaching to the crowds, please remember, He spoke to the crowds in a different way, and He spoke to His disciples in a different way. Mark 4:10 says, when His disciples were alone, when He was alone with His disciples, He expounded the meaning of those parables. When He spoke to the crowds, He spoke in the form of parables. But when He was alone with His disciples, He explained to them the meaning of the parables. You can come closer to God when you can be all alone. That's why Jesus said, go to your closet, shut the doors, and pray to your Father who's in heaven in secret. The great victories are won not on the stage, but in the closets. I tell you, you can spend a lot of money, you can do a lot of fanfare, you can have the best of the people on the stage, but if you did not have a praying person to support you, or if you did not spend enough time on your knees to pray, God will not bless it. I can tell you as preachers, let me tell you as preachers, we know right after the message, how the message went. We know when we walk out of this place how much time we spend on our knees. And here you have a beautiful example of Jacob. He was all alone and God met him. If you want God to meet you, what you need to do is you need to be available to meet God alone. Okay. Alright. So verse 25. When the man saw that he could not overpower him. So what kind of guy is he? He's a good wrestler. He's a good wrestler. He touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched. And as he wrestled with the man, then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Hold on. What is this man talking? You know what Jacob says here? Jacob understood his emptiness. His gifts itself to Esau were 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels and their youngs, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys, lot many servants, 4 wives, 11 children and a daughter. With all these things, Jacob says, I'm still not blessed. I tell you, my brothers and sisters, how much ever material wealth you may have, unless God puts a blessing on it, you will still continue to find the emptiness. This man realized his emptiness. With all the riches, externally to all the people, he's such a rich man. Right? When he's giving a gift to his brother, what is the gift? It's only a small percentage. He himself admits and says, what? I started single, but today, after 20 years, I am into 2 camps. But even with those 2 camps, Jacob says, Lord, I need your blessing. I am still not blessed. This man was a grabber. He ran after the birthright. He ran after cheating his brother. He ran after the girl, Rachel. He ran after property. He ran after all these earthly things. But he comes to one point at that night and says, I am still not blessed. And I want you to bless me. Alright, when he says, I want you to bless me, what is the question God puts there? What's the question God puts there? What's your name? Why do you think God asked this question? Why do you think God asked this question? Do you think when you ask God, bless me, God would say, what's your name? I need to write a check on your name. Do you think God says that? Let me know your name. What is the meaning in God saying, tell me what's your name? 20 years ago, when he went to get the blessing from his dad asked him the same question. What is your name? And that day Jacob said, I am Esau. Today, God asked this man a question. What is your name? This time Jacob was not ready to lie. He was ready to open his life before God and said, God, I am Jacob. I am a deceiver. I am a manipulator. I am a grabber, Lord. When he came out openly and honestly before God, what did God do? Verse 28. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. You have struggled with God and with men and you have overcome. Alright. Now look at what this guy is. He's still got this fighting spirit in him. He asked me my name. Okay, but what's your name? Do you see that? When God asked him your name, Jacob said, my name is Jacob. And Jacob in return is asking, hey, You asked me my name, but what's your name? So what did the man do? One man say, why do you ask me my name? Then he blessed him there. He said, you don't know my name. I want to tell you something. God did not reveal His name to Jacob, but God revealed His name to Moses. When Moses asked the same question, like, who do I tell the Israelites who sent me? What did God say? Tell them, I am has sent you. So it is God's discretion, it's God's sovereignty, how He reveals Himself to the people. Okay, so here you find God did not reveal Himself, His name to Jacob, but He revealed Himself to Moses. Alright, then that place Jacob was blessed. And then, verse 31. Look at verse 31. The sun rose. Did you remember? Chapter 28. The sun set. Chapter 32. The sun rose. So here it's not just sun rising, but it is also symbolic of the sun rising in the life of Jacob. And then he was limping because of his hip, because it got wrenched. I tell you one thing. Every step that Jacob put as a limping man. You remember he had a staff and he was holding on to the staff? Yeah? He had a staff and he had to hold on to that staff. So every time Jacob put a step to walk, what do you think he remembered all his life? What do you think he remembered all his life? That night, that when he wrestled, every step he would, oh my pain, oh, okay, that is the night. God reminded this man, every moment, his encounter with Him that night. And that's why you find verse 32, therefore to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. If you go to Muslim countries, okay, if you go to Muslim countries, or if you come to India, where I grew up, it's also a Muslim area, you'll find when they cut this goat or a lamb, you'll find the shank hanging there, because the Muslims won't eat that, or the Jews also would not eat that. They don't eat that. That part has got good meat too, because that's left for the Gentiles. That's on a side note, okay. But chapter 32 is a beautiful, beautiful chapter. I want you to go back home and study this encounter of Jacob with God, okay? And we'll continue with this in the next class.